In the late afternoon of August 27, 2021, tragedy struck at Mount Washington Alpine Resort on Vancouver Island. A 3-year-old girl tragically passed away. The event occurred as the time neared 4 p.m. during what had started as a typical Friday afternoon for guests at the resort. The young girl happily played mini-golf with her siblings at the resort, alongside her brother and parents. The entire family was enjoying themselves, unaware that their joy would be destroyed suddenly. About 4:15 p.m., a rock came loose from its position above, detached from its unstable resting place, and quickly fell towards the ground below at an alarming speed. The 3-year-old girl was knocked unconscious immediately by the rock, hitting her with a sickening thud. The surprising occurrence caused the group to panic. With a sense of urgency, they quickly moved into action, removing the unconscious child from the area. Exactly at 4:25 p.m., the base lodge received the injured girl, who was met by a team of committed staff and first aid responders. With a sense of urgency born of necessity, they began immediate medical interventions, concentrating on stabilizing the young patient and giving her the highest chance of survival. At 4:30 p.m., a call for help was made to emergency services, and the Royal Canadian Mounted Police was notified for help. The emergency services reaction was quick and well organized. 2 ambulances, sent from Cumberland and Campbell River, rushed toward the resort, their sirens cutting through the quiet mountain atmosphere. At the same time, an air ambulance from Qualicum Beach was also sent to assist in the rescue mission. By 4:45 p.m., paramedics and emergency teams had arrived at the lodge. Even though the individuals working on the rescue mission made relentless efforts, the result ended in a tragic inevitability. At 5:10 p.m., the young girl took her last breath as she succumbed to her injuries caused by the accident. After the event, immediate inquiries were conducted about the factors that resulted in such a catastrophic result. Director of BC RCMP Communications, Dawn Roberts, shared initial information about the ongoing investigation. Although the specific reason for the rock becoming loose was unclear, Roberts made it clear that it came from a rock wall by the mini golf course, not the mountain. Roberts emphasized that the incident was accidental, with no harmful intentions, as she offered her sincere sympathy to the mourning family. Showing understanding and care, she recognized the deep sorrow they had suffered, promising a detailed inquiry to uncover the truth about the event. As a safety precaution, the resort closed its mini golf course promptly after the incident. This clear action emphasized Mount Washington Alpine Resort's dedication to putting safety first and avoiding additional harm to visitors. Dean Prentice, the general manager of the resort, conveyed deep sorrow and sympathy for the family impacted by the tragedy. In a 6:30 p.m. statement, he expressed the resort team's sincere sympathies, acknowledging the significant effect of the loss. Prentice thanked the first responders and resort staff for their commitment and hard work in challenging circumstances. As the inquiry into the event progressed with the BC Coroner Service and the RCMP in charge, words provide little comfort in times of deep sorrow. After this tragic loss, the community grieved the death of a young life cut short.
On a brisk April morning in 1993, Donna Spangler, a 58-year-old fitness instructor from Durango, Colorado, stood with her husband, Robert M. Spangler, on a steep trail in Grand Canyon National Park. The air was crisp and their anticipation hung in the air. Little did Donna know this expedition would be her last. Donna and Robert's relationship showed signs of strain for some time. Despite being together for 3 years, their marriage was marred by disagreement and discontent. They met in April 1989, exactly 4 years before Donna's tragic demise. The following year, they exchanged vows, but their marriage was far from perfect. Their lack of shared interest became increasingly apparent as time went on. Donna, a fitness and health lover, spent her days teaching aerobics at the Durango Health Club. Meanwhile, a country music DJ, Robert, found peace in the great outdoors, often going on solo hiking trips to clear his mind. The spring of 1993 brought a glimmer of hope as the couple planned to hike the Grand Canyon together. It seemed like an opportunity to reconnect and rediscover the bond that had brought them together in the first place. With eagerness in their hearts, they set out for their adventure. Arriving at the Grand Canyon, Robert chose the Grand View Trail for their hike. It was a popular route offering breathtaking views and challenging terrain. Horseshoe Mesa, their intended destination, lay approximately 2,600 feet below the rim. Excitement coursed through Donna as they began their descent. Donna couldn't shake the unease that had settled in her gut as they hiked. She wasn't an experienced hiker, and the rugged land of the trail made her nervous. Still, she pressed on, wanting to make the most of their time together. Their journey led them to a secluded spot near the Last Chance Mine, where they decided to camp for the night. It was a moment of peace and tranquility despite the chaos of their troubled relationship. But the calm was shattered the following day when tragedy struck. In a moment of madness, Robert made a decision that would change their lives forever. Standing face to face with Donna on the trail, he succumbed to his darkest impulses and pushed her over the edge. The world seemed to stand still as Donna tumbled down the cliffside, her screams slowly getting lost in the wind as she fell further down. In an instant, she was gone. Shock and disbelief washed over Robert as he realized what he had done. Frantically, he scrambled down the trail to where Donna's lifeless body lay, her injuries too severe to comprehend. Panic gripped him as he struggled to come to terms with the enormity of his actions. He knew there would be no turning back from this moment, no way to undo the irreparable damage he had caused. In a daze, Robert went to the National Park Service backcountry office, his mind reeling with guilt and regret. He recounted a fabricated tale of Donna's accidental fall, desperate to evade the consequences of his heinous crime. But the truth would not stay hidden for long. Rangers soon discovered discrepancies in Robert's story, leading them to suspect foul play. As they delved deeper into the circumstances surrounding Donna's death, a chilling pattern began to emerge. It seemed that Robert M. Spangler was not the loving husband he appeared to be. In a shocking turn of events, Robert confessed to not only Donna's murder, but also to the deaths of his first wife, Nancy, and their two children, Susan and David, nearly 15 years earlier. His confession shocked people, leaving friends and family reeling from the revelation of his dark past. As the details of Robert's crimes came to light, the community struggled to reconcile the image of the man they thought they knew with the cold-blooded killer he had become. His actions shattered lives and left behind a trail of devastation that would haunt those who knew him for years to come. In the end, justice was served, but the scars left by Robert's actions would never fully heal. Donna Spangler, a beloved mother, grandmother, and friend, was gone, her life cut short by the very person who had sworn to love and protect her. What if Donna had listened to her instincts and refused to accompany Robert on their ill-fated hike? Would she still be alive today and still be with him? Regardless of all these questions, the truth remained the same, and that Donna's death was unfair. What was supposed to be a fun girls' trip in the heart of nature turned into an absolute nightmare for 42-year-old Carol Sund, her 15-year-old daughter Julie, and 16-year-old Silvina Peloso. It was on February 12, 1999, that the three women left for a 4-day vacation near Yosemite National Park. Carol, Julie, and Silvina left their home in Eureka, California, unafraid and oblivious to what was to come. We can only guess at the excitement the three women must have felt as they boarded their flight to San Francisco. Silvina was an exchange student from Argentina. She and Julie had become friends, and the Suns were very happy to host her. Once they landed, Carol rented a red 1999 Pontiac Grand Prix. They had a lot to do and see, and only 4 days before they were supposed to meet Jens, Carol's husband, back at the San Francisco airport and accompany him on a business trip to Arizona. The women's first stop was Stockton, California. There, Julie took part in a cheerleading contest. After Julie's contest, the three women hit the road again. They arrived in El Portal, California, on February 14th. They planned to stay there for a few days to explore Yosemite National Park. They got a room at Cedar Lodge, a resort located only 8 miles away from the park's entrance. The women spent the following day, February 15th, hiking on one of the park's many trails. It was there in the middle of nature that Carol, Julie, and Silvina were safest. Returning to Cedar Lodge for the night turned out to be an awful, unexpected mistake. The women left the park at some point during the evening. They were tired and wanted to unwind before getting some sleep. They had to return the rented car the next day and then meet Jens, Carol's husband, at the San Francisco airport. But in the hands of destiny, their plans were as good as nothing. Once they got back to Cedar Lodge, the group asked for some videos from the lodge's service desk. It was the last time anyone ever saw them alive. What transpired was a horrendous crime that shook America and marred national park history. On February 16th, Jens Sund was astounded to see that Carol and the girls didn't show up at the airport the way they had agreed. Jens was worried enough to contact the police. Then the facts got muddier. It seemed that checkout had been made in advance. The keys were left inside the room and nothing was amiss. But there was no trace of the women, nor of the car Carol had rented. To make matters worse, the rental car company confirmed Carol had never returned the Pontiac. Local police, rangers, volunteers, family, and friends all came together to comb through the park in a desperate attempt to find the women. 2 weeks later, Carol's wallet inexplicably turned up in Modesto intact. Were they even alive? At this point, the situation looked dire. On March 18, 1999, Jens Sund's worst fears became reality. The red 1999 Pontiac was found, tucked away off Highway 108, in the Stanislaus Forest region, a region that locals used as a dumping ground. The car was burned out. Inside the car, authorities made a gruesome discovery: 2 charred bodies which were later identified as Carol Sund and Silvina Peloso. At this point, the FBI got involved. A week later, authorities received a note indicating the location of Julie's body. "We had fun with this one," the note cruelly said. Julie Sund's body was discovered on March 25th near Lake Pedro, in Tuolumne County. The body was severely decomposed, but the cause of death was clear. Julie's throat had been slashed. It took another crime for the killer to be caught. Joey Ruth Armstrong was gruesomely murdered near her cabin. The day before, some witnesses had spotted a blue car parked near the woman's cabin. Police used this information to find Joey's killer, and were stunned to find that all clues pointed to Carrie Stainer, a 37-year-old handyman at the Cedar Lodge Motel, who they had previously interviewed in connection to the Sund and Palazzo murders. This time, Stainer confessed. On the evening of February 15th, he held Carol, Julie, and Silvina at gunpoint. He promised he wouldn't hurt them if only they cooperated. He lied. He bound and gagged the women, strangled and shot Carol, then sexually assaulted and killed Silvina Peloso, too. He then brought Julie to the lake, where he sexually assaulted her and then cut her throat. Although Stainer pleaded not guilty to the murders of the Sunds and Peloso, claiming insanity, the judge decided to sentence him to death 3 times, once for each murder. Carrie Stainer is now 62 years old and still alive.
On Tuesday, November 20th, 2022, a 33-year-old man and his 31-year-old wife, a married couple, embarked on a permitted 16-mile journey through the Narrows in Zion National Park. This hike typically involves wading through the chilly waters of the Virgin River as it winds its way through an expansive slot canyon. In this area, cell phone reception is virtually non-existent because of its distance from cell towers, and the solid rock and earth forming a canyon also absorb or weaken any signals that manage to penetrate through. While this might have seemed daunting to many, the couple definitely didn't feel this way about the hike. As planned, they quickly covered the miles in good time. However, as nightfall approached, their situation took a turn for the worse. Despite starting the hike with temperatures at a relatively comfortable 49 degrees, the weather unexpectedly plummeted to dangerously low levels. Shockingly, it continued to drop steadily, even plunging below the freezing point. The cold soon proved overwhelming for the couple as they made their way along the hiking trail. It was even worsened by their lack of proper protective gear to ward off the chill. Before long, they began exhibiting symptoms consistent with hypothermia. This condition occurs when the body's temperature drops below normal levels because it's losing heat faster than it can generate it. Sometime during the night, they decided to set up camp and wait until morning instead of pressing on with their hike. They chose a spot approximately 1.5 miles from the end of their intended route. If they had forged ahead just a little more, they would have been able to get help, as there were facilities at the end of the trail. However, they did not, and by morning their condition had deteriorated further from the previous night. At this point, the woman seemed worse off than the man. Seeing his wife's condition, the man, who was also severely injured, summoned the last of his strength to continue the journey alone and seek help for his wife. Eventually, he encountered park visitors who swiftly came to his aid and notified the authorities. Over 20 search and rescue team members were promptly mobilized and rushed to the couple's stopping point. Upon their arrival, the search and rescue team discovered the man receiving assistance from fellow hikers. He was promptly transported to the Zion Emergency Operations Center for urgent medical treatment. Further along the trail, they located his wife near the Virgin River, where she lay unresponsive. Despite efforts to resuscitate her by one of the hikers, she did not respond. Tragically, it was soon confirmed that she had passed away. An investigation into the cause of the woman's death was initiated, although it was ultimately presumed to have been caused by the effects of hypothermia. To this date, the couple's names are still not known to the public, possibly due to privacy reasons.
One thing and one thing only Tomer Frankfurter wanted as he climbed over the cliff edge: some really cool photos of his trip. He wasn't afraid. After all, Frankfurter knew he wouldn't be the first tourist to make risky decisions for an unforgettable memory. And he was young, barely 18 years old. At that age, everything seems possible. Everything except for the worst. It was September 4th, 2018, and Tomer Frankfurter was visiting Yosemite National Park. The young man was on a 2-month tour of the U.S., after which he had to return to his home in Israel to start his mandatory service in the Israeli army. Frankfurter spent his tour with a family friend from Fresno, California. Frankfurter and his friend arrived at Yosemite together. The day was warm and sunny. Frankfurter chose to follow the Mist Trail, Yosemite's signature hike. With awe-inspiring views scattered all along it, the Mist Trail is extremely popular with tourists. As such, it isn't exactly a lonely hike, but crowds thin out the closer you get to a truly spectacular place, the top of the Nevada Fall, a 594-foot-high waterfall on the Merced River. The more adventurous and fit tourists opt to hike the entirety of the Mist Trail in order to reach the top of the fall. On September 4th, 2018, 18-year-old Tomer Frankfurter was one of them. At some point during the hike, Frankfurter and his friend got separated. But since the Mist Trail is so popular, it wasn't long until Frankfurter found a friendly group of tourists from Israel, Germany, and other countries, and decided to join them for the rest of the day. The trail became increasingly strenuous as they got closer to the top of Nevada Fall, but the effort was more than worth it. Once they got on top of the fall, the group decided it was time to eat lunch, with a view. The place was breathtaking, with the thunderous roar of the water underlying the beauty of the valley below. As they prepared to head back, Tomer Frankfurter had a last-minute idea. He told his new friends he wanted to try and recreate a photo that got a lot of traction on social media. In it, a tourist visiting Telegraph Rock near Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, hanged from a rock outcropping as if the individual was thousands of feet above the ground. What Frankfurter didn't realize, though, was that the photo was merely an optical illusion, with the rock hanging just 3 feet above a trail below. Frankfurter tossed his backpack aside and handed his smartphone to a woman in the group, asking her to take some photos. Others in the group tried to intervene, arguing it was too dangerous, but Frankfurter was determined. He wanted those photos. Ignoring the others, the 18-year-old began climbing over the cliff edge and then dangled himself above the falls. The woman took several photos of Frankfurter. Then came a sudden plea for help. At first, some of the hikers thought the teenager was joking. But then they saw it. His arms were shaking, glistening with sweat. He was struggling to hold on. Several members of the group rushed to his aid, but trying to pull him back onto the trail turned impossible. The would-be saviors couldn't get a good grip of Frankfurter's sweaty arms, and there wasn't any equipment that could help them pull him. It was over in an instant. He slipped from their grasp. Then Tomer Frankfurter fell to his death, some 600 feet below, near the Merced River. He died on impact, becoming one of at least 300 people who died falling from a great height in Yosemite National Park.
The Angel's Landing Trail has been a beloved destination in Zion National Park since it opened to the public in the summer of 1926. Renowned for its awe-inspiring views, the trail draws in hundreds of thousands of hikers annually, all eager to tackle the challenge it presents. Even under ideal conditions, navigating the Angel's Landing Trail requires remarkable coordination. The ascent is long and steady, with an elevation gain of nearly 1,500 feet. As a hiker makes the climb, they may experience dehydration, heat exhaustion, and heat stroke as they experience more sun rays. There is also no water available on the entire route, making it compulsory for every climber to carry at least a quart or two of water if they are to survive the hike. The ultimate challenge comes when climbers reach the last half mile of the trek. At this point, they must continue hiking by holding on to the chains that run parallel to the trail, or else they risk falling into the orange sandstone. Despite the trail's reputation for its challenging terrain and potential risks, 45-year-old Tate Ryan Volino from Osprey, Florida, decided to hike up the trail like countless others before him. On March 3, 2017, he began the trek, which is approximately a 5.4-mile round trip on the eastern edge of Refrigerator Canyon. Rather than joining a group hike, which often provides a sense of security and assistance in times of trouble, Volino opted for a solo expedition. His decision to go solo suggests that he was an experienced hiker, although it was never confirmed. At some point during the climb, Volino fell off one of the higher points on the trail, plummeting straight down to his death. There was no one with him when it happened, so it was unclear what led to his fall. Shortly after, a couple of hikers in the vicinity discovered Volino lying sprawled out motionless on the rocky terrain. They quickly contacted Zion Park's authorities about the situation they had encountered. Thereafter, personnel were dispatched to secure the area and close the trail from other hikers while the park's search and rescue team recovered the body of Volino. The trail was reopened later that day after Volino's body had been taken away. An investigation carried out into Volino's untimely death revealed a high visibility of trauma on his body. This was consistent with injuries sustained from a high fall, although the exact height he fell from remained unknown. His death was later characterized as a tragic hiking accident, as reported by the park authorities. It also marked the 15th death on the Angel's Landing Trail and the first for that year. While he was alive, Volino was known as a prolific writer who once worked in the financial services sector. He wrote numerous golf-themed books and fictional works, including The Front Nine and Pull the Pin. Beyond his literary pursuits, he dedicated his time to volunteering with organizations such as Habitat for Humanity, demonstrating his commitment to serving his community. Additionally, he found solace and joy in kayaking whenever he could seize the opportunity. At the time of his tragic passing, he was survived by his loving wife and 2 sons, whose names were never disclosed. On Saturday, June 5, 2021, 26-year-old Cassie Brown, an avid canyoneer and beloved guide for the Zion Adventure Company, went on a solo canyoneering trip in Zion National Park. In the past, she had often joined other local canyoneers in trying out different terrains. Other times, she had also gone with her mother, who was a fellow enthusiast. However, she chose to go alone on this particular day for unknown reasons. Given Cassie's love for the hobby and her known dedication to safety, her trip was expected to be just another normal one, filled with the thrill of exploration. However, when she stepped out that morning, none of her family could have imagined it would be the last time they would see her alive. As she made her way through the trip, Brown reached a canyon that many considered easy to navigate. Just as she descended off it, she faced a challenge she hadn't anticipated. Her rope, a trusted lifeline that had secured previous descents, unexpectedly got stuck on a rappel. She repeatedly tried to shake it free from the rope, but it refused to budge. At this point, she was at a crossroads of choice. She could either wait for people to find her or try to ascend the rope to her previous route. But since there was no guarantee anyone else would traverse the canyon that day, the prospect of spending a long night trapped halfway down seemed not to appeal to her. Brown then decided to take the bold option of ascending the rope. Regrettably, her choice proved to be ill-fated. While ascending the rope, it unexpectedly gave way at some point. This sudden release propelled her into a harrowing free fall of approximately 50 to 80 feet, ending with her body crashing mercilessly onto the unforgiving rocky terrain below. The impact instantly inflicted her with multiple severe injuries, including broken bones in different parts of her body. An hour after Brown's fall, another group of canyon explorers stumbled upon her abandoned climbing gear. To them, it clearly indicated that a hiker had run into some trouble somewhere within the canyon. Taking the initiative, a member of the party was sent back to inform Zion's search and rescue team, who immediately mobilized their resources and expertise to locate and aid Brown. As the search for Brown intensified, the search and rescue team took decisive measures to ensure her swift rescue, even though it was initially unclear where she had fallen. They temporarily closed off several surrounding hiking routes vital for accessing the canyon, such as the Narrows, Mystery, and Orderville canyons. Even popular stops like the Temple of Sinawava shuttle stop and Riverside Walk were also closed off during the search period. A rescue helicopter was also dispatched to further facilitate the search. However, the canyon's sheer steepness and narrow confines prevented it from reaching Brown's location. After a few hours, medical personnel finally managed to reach Brown, who was lying on the ground, barely alive. They began administering initial treatments and preparation for moving her out of the canyon into the hospital. But sadly, this was a futile effort. Within moments of their arrival, she passed away, succumbing to the injuries she had sustained after her fall. Brown's body was later recovered from the canyon on Sunday evening and taken to the morgue. An investigation was opened to determine the exact cause of the accident, although foul play was not suspected. Following her death, Brown received many tributes from friends and other canyoneers who frequented Zion National Park. One person said she always brought a valued and skilled perspective to the limestone slots of the Grand Canyon and was a masterful practitioner in the art of canyoning. Another person remarked that she was dedicated to service and sharing her knowledge and love of the outdoors with others.
Dean Potter and Graham Hunt spent the afternoon of May 16, 2015, clearing trees and brush from Potter's recently bought property. The day had been rainy and cool, but as the skies cleared and the light dwindled, the two adventurers decided to head toward Yosemite National Park for a jump off Taft Point, a 500-foot promontory that overlooks some of Yosemite's most famous landmarks. The call of the wild, the call of adventure, was almost inescapable for the two men. Yosemite National Park was the background and reason for many of their adrenaline-filled experiences. The men knew that what they were about to do wasn't considered a go-to pastime activity for most people. But they weren't most people. They were base jumpers using their wingsuits and parachutes to dive off impressive cliffs from astonishing heights. At 43 years old, Dean Potter was one of the world's most experienced base jumpers and a legendary daredevil athlete. 29-year-old Graham Hunt was Potter's apprentice. But base jumping is illegal in all national parks. That's why they usually had to wait for dusk or dawn before attempting a jump. Otherwise, they could risk having their expensive gear confiscated, or even spending months in jail. Potter and Hunt arrived at Taft Point along with Jen Rapp, Potter's longtime girlfriend. Rapp was to act as a spotter and photographer for the adventurers. At about 7:25 that evening, the two men were zipped up into their suits, ready to jump. They'd noticed a slight breeze picking up, but Potter's vast experience told him it was nothing to worry about. Neither of them was concerned. They had made the jump plenty of times before, together or alone. They cherished and sought the unique feeling of the drop, the adrenaline, and the gentle caress of the air as their wingsuits inflated. They planned to fly right toward the valley. To do this, the men had to clear Lost Brother, a ridge that extended downward, ending in a vertical wall. The ridge had a notch, a V-shaped indentation that was familiar to both jumpers. Hunt usually went through the notch, but Potter preferred to go around the ridge to the left. Potter was the first to jump. Hunt followed. Rapp snapped pictures, but the men quickly fell out of frame before the lens caught them again, this time soaring. Hunt naturally passed Potter. His suit was made for speed, while Potter's was adapted for long flights. Dean Potter often tried to improve his tactics. In fact, he'd spent some time in Canada working on a new design meant to allow him to land without using a parachute. He also constantly advocated for base jumping. Potter thought the sport should be legal in national parks, which he believed provided a great number of naturally safe spots for jumping. But something unexpected happened that evening. As Jen Rapp took pictures, she could see Graham Hunt veer left. Hunt immediately changed his mind and veered back to the right. Meanwhile, Dean Potter headed toward the notch. They disappeared into the hole out of Rapp's line of sight. Then a noise. A second, duller, heavier noise followed. Rapp couldn't imagine the worst. She waited for a signal from the men, but nothing happened. Rapp left the park and met with Rebecca Haney, Hunt's girlfriend. Hayne was worried sick. When it became clear that something terrible might have happened, the two women contacted Mike Gauthier, Yosemite's chief of staff. Gauthier was the one to assemble a team from Yosemite Search and Rescue. If Potter and Hunt were still alive and injured, time was of the essence. The team searched for hours to no avail. It wasn't until the following morning, on May 17th, that Potter and Hunt were found, when a California state helicopter joined the search efforts. The pilots used Rapp's photos of the previous evening to pinpoint the likely location of the crash. Two Rangers were then short-hauled onto the site. Dean Potter and Graham Hunt were dead. The bodies were recovered, and a memorial was set up on Taft Point. Feathers, a beer can, Tibetan prayer flags, and a photograph of Potter adorned the viewpoint when Rapp returned there, 3 days after the accident. The cause of the accident still remains a mystery, although theories abound. Some say Potter saw Hunt hit the wall and lost his focus, which caused his own crash. Others think Hunt's maneuvers and crash caused air disturbances, which carried Potter to his death. Potter had jumped with a smartphone strapped to his head, but the device was too damaged by the impact. The only one who knows the truth is Yosemite itself.
On Monday, September 14, 2015, a group of 7 hikers set out to explore Keyhole Canyon in Zion National Park, which by the usual estimates should take anywhere from 1 to 4 hours. The group consisted of adults between 40 and 50 years of age, most of whom were California residents. According to reports, their names were Mark McKenzie, Linda Arthur, her husband Steve, Gary Favela, Muku Reynolds, Robin Broom, and Don Teichner. Some of them had taken a canyoneering skills course prior to the hike, as they were newbies to the hobby. Others knew each other through a hiking club in Valencia, California. Together, they weren't the best team, but they had enough experience to get them through the hike on any typical day. However, that seemingly ordinary day in September held something else in stock for the hikers. Just 2 hours past noon, authorities were forced to shut down all the canyons in the vicinity following an unforeseen storm that triggered flash floods. Despite park rangers routinely cautioning hikers about the dangers of floods during monsoon season, this group had defiantly chosen to venture into the canyon. Although the reason behind their decision remains unclear, it might have stemmed from the fact that the Keyhole Canyon permits were coveted by many, as only 80 visitors are allowed to visit it per day. When the storm hit, the hikers were unaware of the flash flooding it had caused. This is because Keystone Canyon is predominantly desert terrain, and there was no means of reaching them in time to warn them ahead. Unfortunately, they ended up getting caught in an unexpected deluge of floodwaters while they were descending the canyon. It likely rushed over their heads in moments and carried them miles downstream to their watery demise. Perhaps the group's dire situation might never have been known if not for 3 other hikers who had crossed paths with them earlier during their own hike. At this chance encounter, they helped the group capture a photograph of themselves that would tragically mark the final image they would ever share. The three hikers, who had narrowly escaped being met by the flash floods, alerted the park rangers about the 7 hikers when they arrived back at base. With this crucial information at hand, the rangers moved to locate the hikers' vehicles to confirm if they were able to make it back. However, when the rangers arrived at their location, their owners were nowhere in sight. Typically, a search and rescue operation would have been mobilized immediately to locate the missing hikers. However, initiating one at the time was deemed too dangerous due to the storm. Hours later, search and rescue teams aided by specially trained dogs combed through several miles of the area. They searched for any sign of the hikers, be it their remains or any indications that one of them had managed to survive the ordeal. The former ended up being the case. Across 1 week, the bodies of each of the 7 hikers popped up in different locations within the canyon, confirming that the flash flood had indeed claimed their lives. The news devastated their families as well as local hiking communities, which some of them belonged to. Several months later, a memorial bench was erected at Topanga State Park to honor the memory of the hikers who lost their lives in the tragic incident.
On January 22, 1977, Michael and Charlotte Sherman went from Texas to California. Michael, a recent dental school graduate, had enlisted in the U.S. Air Force and was relocating for a new assignment. Charlotte, his wife and a dedicated elementary school teacher, accompanied him. After spending the night in Flagstaff, Arizona, the Shermans set off early the following day, eager to explore the Grand Canyon. They arrived at the South Rim entrance between 9:30 and 9:45 a.m., venturing into the park's expansive landscape. The couple decided to venture along the less-traveled West Rim Drive to experience the canyon's breathtaking views away from the crowds. Powell Point was their destination, a scenic overlook known for its panoramic views. As the Shermans gazed at the natural wonders surrounding them, tragedy struck. Just after 11 a.m., their bodies were discovered behind the Powell Memorial. Both had been shot, the apparent victims of a robbery gone wrong. Michael's wallet and Charlotte's purse were missing, suggesting a motive for the crime. Despite the presence of other visitors in the area, no witnesses observed the attack, leaving investigators with few leads. The only clues were reports of a couple matching the description of the assailants seen driving a light-colored station wagon. Law enforcement officials launched an extensive investigation, but the case soon grew cold. Over the years, various theories emerged, ranging from opportunistic robbery to targeted violence. Some speculated that the Shermans may have stumbled upon illicit activity, while others believed they were in the wrong place at the wrong time. In 2008, an experienced investigator, Joe Sumner, joined the Coconino County Sheriff's Office Cold Case Unit, reigniting interest in the mystery. Sumner and his team revisited the evidence, hoping that advances in forensic technology could provide new leads. In 2013, investigators traveled to Georgia to interview potential suspects who matched the description provided by witnesses. Despite their efforts, breakthroughs were not made, not leaving the case at a standstill. The discovery of DNA evidence at the crime scene raised hopes of a resolution, but subsequent analysis failed to gather any matches in law enforcement databases. The identity of the perpetrator remained a mystery, leaving Michael and Charlotte's loved ones grappling with unanswered questions and unresolved grief. As the years passed, the passage of time only deepened the sense of loss for those left behind. Michael's parents, who had hoped to see justice served in their son's murder, passed away without closure. Charlotte's students, deprived of their beloved teacher, grew up without knowing the truth behind her untimely death. Despite the challenges and setbacks, Sumner and his team remained committed to solving the case, determined to bring closure to the victims' families. The mystery of what happened to Michael and Charlotte Sherman continues to haunt the Grand Canyon National Park, sprawling countless questions among people that may never be answered. In the midsummer heat of June 2004, the Grand Canyon National Park bustled with activity as tourists flocked to experience its breathtaking landscapes. Among them was Timothy Clam, a 25-year-old from Illinois. Timothy's journey began innocently enough as he sought to embark on a helicopter tour of the canyon. Eager to secure the best view possible, he repeatedly attempted to book the coveted front seat on a Papillon helicopter's air tour. However, the prime tourist season meant the flights were fully booked, leaving Timothy to stay until an opportunity presented itself. It wasn't until the following day that Timothy's persistence paid off, granting him access to the coveted position he had long wished for. As he sat among his fellow passengers, the anticipation of the adventure ahead mingled with an undercurrent of unease, unnoticed by all but Timothy himself. The safety video played, its instructions showing safety measures to the excited passengers. But for Timothy, the video held a different significance, a sign of the events to come. His eyes, fixed upon the screen, absorbed every detail with a quiet intensity, as if preparing for an inevitable reckoning. With the pre-flight routine complete, the helicopter lifted from the pad, its rotors slicing through the air. As the landscape below receded into a patchwork of earth and sky, Timothy's gaze turned inward, a storm gathering behind his calm exterior. Approximately 38 minutes into the tour, Timothy's resolve solidified into action as the helicopter traced the canyon's rim. With a sudden chilling moment, he unbuckled his seatbelt and reached for the door, his movements deliberate and unhurried. For a fleeting moment, the world seemed to hold its breath as Timothy stood on the door, his gaze fixed upon the land below. Maria Langer, the pilot entrusted with the safety of her passengers, watched in disbelief as Timothy's intentions became clear. With a swift motion, she lunged forward, her hands outstretched desperately to prevent the unthinkable. But Timothy, consumed by his thoughts, was beyond reach, his grip on reality slipping away with each passing moment. And there, without hesitation, he plunged 4,000 feet to his death. For those left behind, the shock of his actions echoed through the cabin. The passengers were left speechless because of the sudden events that unfolded before their very eyes. In the aftermath of Timothy's tragic leap, the helicopter teetered on the edge of chaos, its balance disrupted by the sudden loss of weight. Passengers, gripped by terror, clung to one another as Maria Langer fought to regain control, her hands steady despite the turmoil raging within. As the helicopter touched down near White's Butte, its occupants emerged shaken but unharmed, their minds reeling from the events that had unfolded in the skies above. For Maria Langer, the memory of that tragic day would haunt her for the rest of her days. For Timothy Clam, his final act of defiance shows the uncertainties hidden within oneself. Neither did his closest friends or family know that he longed to seek help for what he was fighting against inside his mind, only for him to decide that his last resort to end his misery was to take his own life. In the days that followed, authorities combed the canyon for traces of Timothy's passing, their efforts hindered by the terrain and massive expanse of the landscape. Despite their best efforts, no sign of Timothy could be found, leaving only questions in their wake. What if his final moments had been spent embracing the world's beauty rather than seeking escape from it? As people gather around to find more questions than answers to his passing, we are sure of one thing: Timothy has already found peace from what he was going through. No matter where he is, he has already escaped the misery he has been battling. It was more than 100 years ago when the final 400-foot ascent of Half Dome, the iconic rock formation in Yosemite National Park, was fitted with cables. Standing at 8,800 feet above sea level, Half Dome has fascinated nature lovers and hikers for the longest time, despite the trickier parts of the hike. The reward, most people say, it's worth the effort. This was probably what Danielle Burnett believed, too. The 29-year-old woman loved nature and was particularly fond of hikes, especially when they provided wonderful views. And what better place for a striking view than Yosemite? Burnett, who was originally from Lake Havasu City, Arizona, and worked as a social media manager at Havasu Springs Resort in Parker, Arizona, arrived at the park on September 5, 2019. She had previously gotten a lottery-distributed permit to climb to the top of Half Dome, a necessity for all those who wish to venture on the hike. The Half Dome Trail traverses some 17 miles and gains about 4,800 feet in elevation. In other words, it's not a walk in the park. In fact, the last portion of the trail is particularly strenuous. That's why it was fitted with cables back in 1919. Hikers are advised to be cautious and avoid the trail if they're unprepared or out of shape. Even the most experienced hikers could face problems out there, with altitude sickness and changing weather being possible obstacles. But this wasn't Danielle Burnett's first time out on a hike. She was all right for the most part of the hike, that is, until she reached the strenuous and famous cable route. Sean Slimp and his group were also on the cable route when they heard a commotion above. When he looked up, Slimp saw Danielle Burnett struggling. A light sprinkle had started, which seemed to terrify Burnett. In her panic, Burnett decided getting to the top wasn't worth it. She needed to turn around even though her group continued on. Slimp watched as Burnett's shoes slipped on the rock. Then the woman fell hard. In an instant, she lost her grip on the cable and started sliding down. Slimp and one of his friends sprang into action, trying to catch Burnett. It was of no use. She was simply too far from their reach. Slimp watched in horror as Danielle Burnett slipped past. Her screams pierced the air. Then she tumbled more than 500 feet down the rocky surface. The rest of the hikers had to be evacuated so a helicopter could fly in. When park rangers arrived on the scene, Danielle Burnett was already dead. Her family was devastated. Her sister, Nicole Burnett, posted a tribute on Facebook, asking people to allow her family to grieve in privacy. "It's with a broken heart to inform you all that our beautiful Danielle left us yesterday doing something she loved so much," Nicole's post also said. According to the Mercury News, Danielle Burnett was at least the 12th person since 1995 whose life was claimed by Half Dome in Yosemite National Park. George Mancuso was a simple man with a love for adventure and a passion for photography. George hailed from the busy streets of New York City, but his heart belonged to the wilderness of the Grand Canyon. George's journey into the canyon began long before his disappearance. As a child, he dreamed of exploring its vast expanses and capturing its beauty through his camera lens. He spent hours examining the canyon's photographs, imagining himself standing amidst its towering cliffs and winding rivers. As he grew older, George's dream became a reality. He went on countless expeditions into the canyon, each more thrilling than the last. He hiked its trails, rafted its rivers, and camped beneath its star-studded sky. George felt more connected to the canyon and its beauty with each adventure. But George's love for the canyon was not without its dangers. In 1999, he suffered a severe knee injury while hiking in the depths of the canyon. The injury left him bedridden for months, but it only strengthened his determination to explore further. Despite the pain, George was determined to continue his desire to capture the essence of the canyon through his photographs. In August 2001, George set out on his final expedition into the canyon. He was accompanied by his friend Linda Bramer, a fellow adventurer who loves the outdoors. Together, they planned to hike to the confluence of the Little Colorado River Gorge and Salt Trail Canyon, a remote and rarely visited area of the canyon. The journey started like any other, with George and Linda quickly navigating the winding trails and cliffs of the canyon. They laughed and joked as they walked deeper into the wilderness, unaware of the dangers ahead. As they neared their destination, dark clouds began to gather overhead. George and Linda knew that monsoon season was in full swing, but they were confident that they could outrun any storms that came their way. Little did they know nature had other plans. Suddenly the sky opened without warning, unleashing a torrential downpour upon the canyon. The rain fell in sheets, turning the desert landscape into a muddy, treacherous terrain. George and Linda knew they had to find shelter fast, but there was nowhere to hide. As they scrambled to find higher ground, they heard the distant roar of rushing water. It was the sound of a flash flood barreling down the narrow gorge towards them with unstoppable force. Panic set in as George and Linda realized they were trapped, with nowhere to run and nowhere to hide. The flood hit with a deafening roar, sweeping George and Linda off their feet and into the raging waters below. They clung to each other desperately, fighting against the current as it carried them downstream. Rocks tumbled, trees crashed, and the once peaceful waters turned into a churning maelstrom of destruction. George and Linda battled the elements for hours, their strength waning with each passing moment. They tried to stay afloat to keep their heads above water, but it was a losing battle. In the end, they were no match for the floods of the canyon. When the flood finally subsided, George and Linda were nowhere to be found. Search teams scoured the canyon for days, combing its land in search of any sign of their whereabouts. Helicopters circled overhead, their searchlights cutting through the darkness as they scanned the canyon walls for any trace of the missing hikers. But despite their best efforts, George and Linda remained a mystery. Their families were left to grapple with the agonizing uncertainty of their loss, clinging to the hope that they would one day be found. As the days passed and eventually turned into weeks and months, theories about what had happened to George and Linda emerged. Some believed they had been swept away by the flood and drowned, their bodies lost forever in the depths. Others speculated that they had managed to find shelter somewhere in the wilderness, waiting to be rescued. However, as time passed and no sign of George and Linda surfaced, the truth became increasingly apparent. They were gone, victims of a cruel and unforgiving landscape that had claimed so many lives before them. And though their bodies were never found, their memories would forever roam the Grand Canyon, lost but never forgotten.
In the heart of South Africa's Kruger National Park, a place where wild beauty meets the thrill of adventure, the von Rensburg family embarked on what was meant to be a memorable camping trip. Amid the sprawling savannas and the echoing calls of the wild, 15-year-old Erko Janse von Rensburg found himself in the clutches of a nightmare far removed from the peaceful slumber he had expected under the starlit sky. Erko, a boy from Centurion near Pretoria, had chosen to spend the night in a separate tent, a mere annex to the trailer where his parents Erno and Cassandra and his two sisters lay sleeping, oblivious to the impending horror. The campsite, nestled within the confines of the Crocodile Bridge camp, was supposed to be a safe haven, a secure enclosure amidst the untamed wilderness. Yet fate had other plans, as a silent predator lurked in the shadows, eyeing its unsuspecting prey. The incident unfolded in the pre-dawn hours, a time when the night still clung to the earth with its cool, dark embrace. It was then that a hyena, a cunning scavenger drawn by the scent of human presence, exploited a gap in the camp's defenses, a breach possibly made by itself or an unwitting warthog. With stealthy silence, the beast approached Erko's tent, its intent as malicious as nature's raw survival instinct could dictate. The attack was sudden and vicious. The hyena, with jaws as powerful as the legendary great white shark, clamped down on Erko's face, the crushing sound of bones eerily reminiscent of crisps being trampled underfoot. Dragged from the safety of his tent, Erko was pulled across the ground, his pajama top serving as an unwilling leash for his assailant. It was a scene straight out of a horror story, played out under the indifferent gaze of the moon. Miraculously, the commotion awakened Johann, Erko's uncle, who was camping nearby. The sight that greeted him was one of sheer terror. Erko, his nephew, being mauled by a hyena, an image that would haunt the bravest of souls. With adrenaline fueling his actions, Johann did the unthinkable. He chased the hyena away, a move as daring as it was desperate. Erko's ordeal was far from over, though. Conscious throughout the attack, he was a first-hand witness to his own survival story, one that would be told with a mixture of awe and disbelief. The boy was swiftly rushed to the hospital, where he underwent several grueling surgeries to reconstruct his mutilated face. The operations, intricate and delicate, spanned hours, with surgeons working tirelessly to mend the physical scars of that fateful night. Back at Kruger National Park, the incident sent shockwaves through the community of rangers and visitors alike. The breach in the camp's security was promptly addressed, but the elusive hyena remained at large, a reminder of the wild's unpredictable nature. Park officials, while expressing regret, urged campers to adhere to safety guidelines, a plea underscored by the grim realization that the line between humans and wildlife is both delicate and fraught with danger. Hyenas, who were often seen as scavengers of the savanna, had grown bold, their nocturnal ventures into campsites becoming increasingly common. Attracted by the remnants of campfires and the lure of easy meals, these creatures had lost their wariness of humans, a shift in behavior that posed a significant risk to all who ventured into their domain. The incident with Erko was a stark reminder of this evolving dynamic, a narrative punctuated by calls for vigilance and respect for the wild's untamed inhabitants. As Urko lay recovering in the intensive care unit, unable to speak but alive against the odds, his family rallied around him. The trauma of the attack left its mark, not just on Urko, but on all who loved him. His parents, his sisters, and especially Johan, who had played the role of an unlikely hero in the darkest hour, were united in their relief and their resolve to overcome the ordeal. The attack on Urko von Rensburg at Kruger National Park serves as a harrowing tale of survival, a stark reminder of the wild's unforgiving nature. Yet amidst the horror, there were glimmers of human resilience and bravery, a testament to the indomitable spirit that defines us in moments of crisis. As the von Rensburg family looked to the future, they did so with a renewed appreciation for life's fragility and the bonds that hold them together, forged stronger in the face of adversity.
Austin, described as a skilled tree climber and adept outdoorsman, had a deep-rooted love for the wilderness. His partner, whose identity remains undisclosed, shared his enthusiasm for hunting and exploration. Together, they set out into the remote Cottonwood Creek drainage, bringing with them their determination and desire for adventure. The day before tragedy struck, Austin and his companion successfully hunted a moose, a feat that spoke volumes of their hunting expertise. As they celebrated their triumph under the vast Alaskan sky, little did they anticipate the impending danger in their surroundings. The following morning, they returned to the moose kill site to field dress the animal and return the meat to their campsite. It was a routine task, one they had performed countless times before. As Austin's partner made his way back to the kill site with a load of meat, a grizzly bear suddenly confronted him, its massive form emerging from the dense foliage. In a desperate bid to defend himself, Austin's partner fired several shots at the charging animal, causing it to retreat momentarily. But the respite was short-lived. When Austin's partner returned to the moose carcass, he was met with a scene of horror. Austin was still there, but he was lying there lifeless already. Austin's partner was left grieving and questioning what could have happened to him. It turns out that before the attack on Austin's partner, Austin, unaware of the unfolding tragedy, continued to butcher the moose, his focus consumed by the task. In a cruel twist of fate, the peacefulness present within the forest was shattered by the bear's savage attack. With no defensive weapon, Austin stood defenseless against the onslaught of the wild animal's fury. Austin was instantly overpowered by the animal with no bear spray or even a weapon, causing his unexpected death. After Austin was attacked, the same bear went to attack his partner, who managed to shoot it and drive it away. However, it was all too late. Austin lay lifeless, the victim of a surprise attack that had claimed his life in an instant. Having fled the scene, the bear left only devastation and despair behind. As news of the tragedy spread, the hunting community rallied around Austin's wife, Riley Pfeiffer, offering their support and condolences in the face of unimaginable loss. The National Park Service, in a heartbreaking announcement, confirmed Austin's death as the first known fatal bear mauling in Wrangell, St. Elias National Park, since its establishment in 1980. Despite their best efforts, park officials were unable to locate the bear responsible for the attack, leaving lingering questions about the circumstances surrounding Austin's untimely demise. In the wake of the tragedy, theories began to emerge about what could have led to the fatal encounter. Some speculated that the scent of the freshly killed moose may have attracted the bear, while others pointed to the remoteness of the location as a contributing factor. As investigators meticulously sifted through the evidence, piecing together the events leading up to the tragedy, one pressing question loomed large over the hearts and minds of those touched by the sorrowful incident. Could Austin have stood a chance at self-defense had he been armed with bear spray or a firearm? This pivotal query lingered, enveloped in the shadows of speculation and the haunting realm of what-ifs. The circumstances of the event were complex, with variables that made any definitive answer elusive, leaving those involved to grapple with the painful ambiguity surrounding the incident. Amidst this turmoil, Austin's legacy continued to resonate, his spirit vividly alive in the cherished memories and enduring love of friends, family, and all who had the privilege of knowing him. His story, marked by this tragic episode, prompted a deeper reflection on preparedness and safety in the face of nature's unpredictability, ensuring that his memory would serve as a poignant reminder for others venturing into the wilderness. Rochelle Rankin and Michael Huffman, retirees from the Missouri Department of Conservation, went on a hiking trip in Wrangell, St. Elias National Park, Alaska, in June 2018. Rankin, a 62-year-old research scientist, and Huffman, also 62, shared a passion for the outdoors and were eager to explore the rugged wilderness of Alaska. They had carefully planned their journey, packing essential gear and preparing for the challenges ahead. Their trip began near the Sanford Glacier, where they were dropped off by a small aircraft. Excitement coursed through their veins as they set foot on the remote terrain, ready to immerse themselves in nature's wonders. Rankin and Huffman, seasoned backpackers with years of experience, were well prepared for the demands of the Alaskan wilderness. Their initial days were filled with awe-inspiring vistas and thrilling encounters with wildlife. They gazed upon the towering mountains, vast glaciers, and lakes surrounding them. Despite the physical exertion required by their journey, they relished every moment, grateful for the opportunity to explore such remote and untouched landscapes. However, they encountered challenges that tested their resilience as they explored the wilderness. Unpredictable weather patterns, dangerous terrain, and limited resources constantly hindered their progress. Despite this, Rankin and Huffman pressed on, driven by their shared determination and love for adventure. Days passed and nights went on as they traversed the terrain, setting up camp wherever nightfall caught up with them. Their bond grew stronger with each passing day as they relied on each other for support and companionship. Despite the isolation of their surroundings, they found peace in each other's presence, finding joy in life's simple pleasures. However, their journey took a tragic turn when they attempted to cross the Sanford River. Caught off guard by a sudden surge in water levels, they were swept away by the powerful current. Desperately clinging to each other, they fought against the raging waters, but their efforts were in vain. In a cruel twist of fate, they were separated, their cries drowned out by the roaring sound of the river. As the days passed without any word from Rankin and Huffman, concern grew among their friends and family back home. June 27th, the day they were scheduled to be picked up, came and went with no sign of the hikers. It was on July 1st that a breakthrough came when search teams stumbled upon footprints along the banks of the Sanford River. The discovery of the footprints offered a glimmer of hope to their loved ones, who had been anxiously awaiting news of their fate. However, as the search continued, their hopes were dashed when Rankin and Huffman's backpacks were found abandoned along the riverbank. It was a heartbreaking sight. Despite the exhaustive search efforts, a grim discovery was made. Rankin and Huffman's lifeless bodies were spotted along the banks of the Sanford River. Their death shocked their community, leaving their friends and family grappling with grief and disbelief. Rankin, known for her dedication to wildlife conservation, had spent 28 years working for the Missouri Department of Conservation. Her passion for the environment had touched the lives of many, leaving a lasting impact on those she encountered. Huffman, a beloved advocate for outdoor recreation, had devoted his life to promoting the benefits of nature and conservation efforts. His kind heart and adventurous spirit had endeared him to all who knew him, leaving behind a legacy that would not be forgotten on Wrangell, St. Elias National Park. The memory of Rankin and Huffman lives on. Their story reminds us that life is unpredictable, and we never really know what's hiding in our surroundings when exploring the wild.
At the end of autumn in 2001, Louise Chaput, a 52-year-old psychologist from Sherbrooke, Quebec, set off on a solo hiking adventure to the White Mountains, an area famous for its tough landscape and harsh weather. Louise, a skilled and enthusiastic hiker, intended to spend the weekend discovering the stunning scenery of the Presidential Range, a place she had previously frequented and loved for its beauty. It was clear to those close to Louise that she had a strong interest in nature and outdoor activities. Described as a kind person who helped others and had a great sense of humor, Louise found comfort and happiness in the peacefulness of the wilderness. Even with her busy schedule as a family and marital psychologist, Louise always found a way to prioritize her favorite outdoor activities. In the afternoon of Thursday, November 15, 2001, Louise reached the Pinkham Notch Visitor Center in New Hampshire, prepared to start her hiking journey alone. Excited to move around after the long car journey, she took a brief walk, leaving her silver Ford Focus estate car parked in the parking area. Witnesses reported that Louise asked about a suitable path for a short trip. The Lost Pond Trail across the street was suggested by a staff member at the visitor center. Louise, showing her appreciation, went toward the trail, expecting to be back before evening. Time went by, but Louise did not come back to her lodge as she had intended. Worried about her safety, her family informed the authorities that she was missing. A search and rescue operation took place with the participation of various agencies and volunteers. In spite of the difficult conditions caused by severe weather and rough terrain, search teams tirelessly combed the area, eager to uncover any sign of the lost hiker. Louise's car was found abandoned at the Glen Falls parking area, near the trailhead where she began her hike. Back then, nobody knew it would be the last time she'd be seen alive. The grim finding increased concerns about her well-being and escalated the search endeavors. But it wasn't until the 22nd of November, the day of Thanksgiving, that the search efforts would bear fruit. While hiking the Glen Boulder Trail near Mount Washington, hikers came across a haunting scene, the dead body of Louise Chaput. Her body showed several stab wounds, clear evidence of her brutal murder. The gruesome discovery caused a stir in the community and left investigators scrambling to solve the mystery of Louise's murder. Her demise sparked concerns and speculation about who the killer could be due to the unclear circumstances. Even with extensive work by the authorities, the situation continued to be shrouded in mystery. Investigators went through evidence, spoke with witnesses, and followed leads, yet the mysterious culprit continued to evade capture. One prevailing theory proposed that theft could be a potential reason. Louise's blue Canuck sleeping bag and backpack were not found at the location, suggesting that she may have had a confrontation with her attacker. Nevertheless, the pilfered goods had minimal inherent worth, causing some to doubt the reasoning behind the theft. Additionally, the killer's behavior following the murder perplexed investigators even more. Notably, the perpetrators did not steal Louise's car or use her credit or bank cards, indicating that their main goal may not have been financial profit. As the investigation continued, officials felt increasing pressure to solve the case and provide justice for Louise and her bereaved family members. Nevertheless, even with their exhaustive efforts, the trail went cold, and the killer continued to evade identification. In the years after, the unresolved homicide of Louise Chaput remained a haunting presence over the White Mountain, reminding people of the perils hidden in the area's picturesque landscapes. Even with time passing, the memory of Louise's tragic fate remains, serving as a reminder of how fragile life is and the ongoing search for truth and justice. However, despite the ongoing doubts and questions, a pressing question remains. Who was accountable for the tragic murder of Louise Chaput, and will she ever receive justice?
Peter Pye Inglis was no stranger to the call of the mountains. From his early days exploring the snow-covered slopes near Smuggler's Notch in Vermont, to his later adventures guiding clients through the rough lands of Colorado, he had always felt most alive when surrounded by the beauty of the great outdoors. Growing up in Vermont, Pye's love for skiing and mountaineering was fostered by his family. His parents, avid outdoor enthusiasts themselves, instilled in him a deep appreciation for the natural world and a sense of adventure that would stay with him for the rest of his life. As he grew older, Pye's passion for adventure only intensified. After graduating from college, he moved to Telluride, Colorado, where he immersed himself in the mountain culture and began honing his ski patroller and guide skills. It wasn't long before he earned a reputation as one of the best in the business, known for his undeniable dedication to safety and unparalleled backcountry knowledge. But Pye's thirst for adventure knew no bounds. In addition to his work in Colorado, he led expeditions to some of the world's most remote and challenging peaks, from the towering peaks of the Himalayas to the icy slopes of the Alps. His clients trusted him implicitly, knowing that he would always put their safety above all else. In 2015, Pye found himself drawn to the wilds of Alaska, where he began working as a guide for the Ultima Thule Lodge in the Wrangell, St. Elias National Park and Preserve. Here, amidst the beauty of the Alaskan wilderness, that tragedy struck and changed everything. On April 1st, while leading a group of clients on a backcountry skiing expedition, Pye fell victim to a treacherous cornice. The snowpack, which had seemed stable just moments before, gave way beneath him, sending him tumbling down the mountainside to his death. Pi's passing shocked the mountain community, leaving his friends, colleagues, and admirers grieving. For those who knew him, Pi's death was a terrifying example of the dangers that come hidden in the mountains they loved so dearly. For Pi's wife, Julie Hodson, and their families, the pain of his loss was immeasurable. But amidst the grief, they found peace and closure in the memories they shared with Pi, the adventures they had gone on together, and the knowledge that he had lived life to the fullest. As they struggled with the reality of his death, they took comfort in knowing that Pi had died doing what he loved, surrounded by the mountains he cherished. And though his physical presence may have been taken from them too soon, his spirit would live on in the wild places he called home. As the mountain community mourned the loss of one of its own, they were left to ponder the questions that lingered in the air. What if Pi's death could have been prevented? What if he had been more cautious? What if he had chosen a different path? These questions served as a harsh reminder of the risks of venturing into the wilderness, a reminder that even the most experienced and skilled mountaineers were not immune to the dangers of the mountains. As they grappled with these questions, they vowed to honor Pi's memory by continuing to explore the wild places he loved, but always with a sense of caution and respect for the beauty of the natural world.
The cool September breeze swept over New Hampshire in 1855. 23-year-old Lizzie Bourne from Kennebunk began her last adventure, a hike up Mount Washington. With her adventurous spirit, Lizzie eagerly got ready to conquer the 6,288-foot mountain, joined by her Uncle George, Cousin Lucy, and Uncle George's wife, Aunt Jane. Their adventure started without any trouble. They took the morning train from Saco, Maine, and arrived at the Glen House, a charming hotel located at the foot of the mountain. A mix of excitement and nervousness hung in the air as they looked at Mount Washington's daunting peak, covered in mist. Ignoring the warnings of bad weather to come, Lizzie urged her Uncle George and his daughter Lucy to start climbing right away, instead of waiting until morning. They embarked on the 8-mile carriage trail to the summit with enthusiasm and a longing for adventure. By 4 p.m., the group started feeling tired and took a short break at the halfway house. At this location, construction workers, aware of the approaching storm, suggested that they abandon their climb. Nevertheless, driven by a strong will and misconception regarding their chances of beating the elements, the girls convinced Uncle George to continue the trek, ignoring the warnings as mere speculation. Visibility decreased and temperatures dropped as darkness fell over the mountain. The group fought to stay oriented in the dangerous terrain, battling strong winds and dense fog. Even with all the hard work they put in, they came to the unsettling realization that their journey was not yet complete. With determination, Uncle George built a basic rudimentary stone wall to protect his loved ones from the harsh conditions in a last-ditch effort to survive, a feeble wall against the unrelenting elements. All night long, he carefully looked after Lizzie and Lucy, providing whatever small amount of comfort he could during the never-ending storm. Regrettably, Uncle George's worst fears were realized at approximately 10 p.m. when he went to see the girls and saw that Lizzie was not moving. He held her hand and noticed it was chilly. Lizzie's motionless body showed no indication of life. She had succumbed to the harsh elements of Mount Washington, and amidst its terrain, she took her last breath. The morning offered no comfort as Uncle George and Lucy, dealing with sorrow and shock, sought help from the tip-top house. 4 individuals descended and brought Lizzie's lifeless body back to the hotel. The group tried for 4 hours to bring Lizzie back with hot rocks and hot baths, but she was already gone. The workers quickly constructed a wooden box, and several women carefully placed Lizzie inside. Utilizing a pole and leather straps, 2 men assisted the grieving family and cautiously descended the mountain with Lizzie's body. The group arrived at the Glen House following a journey that lasted 3 hours. Aunt Jane welcomed them with a gloomy expression. The group traveled back to Portland on the train with the coffin. After the tragic death of Lizzie, there were unanswered questions about how she died. It was found that she was unprepared for the climb's challenges. dressed in clothes not appropriate for the harsh mountain conditions. Lizzie was dressed appropriately for the weather, wearing multiple petticoats, a thick dress, a scarf, wool cloak, and a bonnet. The garments were 35 pounds, heavy, and soaked from the rain. Additionally, her unidentified heart issue could have increased her vulnerability to the surroundings, emphasizing the importance of being adequately prepared and careful when venturing into the wilderness. Also, it later came to light that no one in the hiking group had brought water or was adequately equipped for the weather. Nevertheless, despite the sorrow and regret following Lizzie's untimely death, her story still serves as a cautionary tale of the severe conditions of Mount Washington and the importance of heeding its warnings. Lizzie's story is a collection of what-ifs. What if they had heeded the warnings before proceeding? What if they had known about Lizzie's heart condition? What if they had been better prepared for the journey? Regardless, one thing is for sure. The life of a young and adventurous woman was cut short, as the slopes of Mount Washington claimed. In the expansive wilderness of South Africa's Kruger National Park, a heart-wrenching tragedy unfolded that would leave a family shattered and a community in mourning. The serene beauty of this vast reserve, known for its majestic wildlife and breathtaking landscapes, was the backdrop to a horrifying incident that claimed the life of a young boy, barely 2 years old. Courtney Ntamani, the son of Isaiah Ntamani, a technician employed within the park, was the victim of a rare but fatal attack by a leopard. The events leading to this tragic outcome began innocently enough, with the family enjoying the comforts of their bungalow located within the staff quarters of the park. As darkness enveloped the park around 8 p.m., a time when the wild's nocturnal inhabitants awakened, the unimaginable happened. Isaiah, having stepped inside their residence momentarily, was oblivious to the imminent danger lurking in the shadows. Courtney, following his father with the innocent curiosity of a toddler, became the target of a stealthy predator. The leopard, seizing the opportunity, launched an attack from the darkness, its powerful jaws clamping down on the unsuspecting child. The father's return to the outdoors was prompted by a chilling scream, a sound no parent ever wishes to hear. The sight that met Isaiah's eyes was one of pure horror. His beloved son, held captive in the jaws of the leopard, being dragged toward the perimeter fence. Fueled by desperation and terror, Isaiah's scream startled the leopard, causing it to drop Courtney and retreat to the safety of a nearby tree, from where it had initially descended. Despite the parents' frantic efforts to save their son, rushing him to Shangway Hospital in Mpumalanga, the severity of Courtney's injuries proved too great. The doctors could only confirm what the parents feared most. Courtney was pronounced dead upon arrival. The news of his passing sent shockwaves through the community, a tragic reminder of the precarious balance between humanity and the wild. In the wake of the attack, the Kruger National Park authorities took immediate action, tracking down the female leopard responsible for the attack. The decision was made to euthanize the animal, a measure deemed necessary to prevent future tragedies. This decision, while difficult, underscored the harsh realities of life near wild predators and the unpredictable nature of their interactions with humans. The investigation into the attack revealed that the leopard was in prime health, with no signs of injury or disease that might have explained its aggressive behavior. This detail only added to the mystery of the incident, raising questions about the factors that could drive a seemingly healthy animal to attack a human. The funeral for young Courtney was a somber affair, attended by many who knew the family, including fellow KNP Rangers. The community came together to mourn the loss of a life taken too soon, offering their support and condolences to the Ntamani family. Isaiah, heartbroken and bereft, struggled to come to terms with the loss of his son, his grief compounded by the vivid memories of that fateful night. In the aftermath of the tragedy, the leadership of the South African National Parks issued statements expressing their deep sympathy for the Ntamani family and acknowledging the inherent risks faced by those living and working near wild animals. They reaffirmed their commitment to the conservation of wildlife, while also recognizing the need for increased vigilance and safety measures to protect park staff and their families. The incident highlighted the unpredictable nature of wild animals, even those that may appear habituated to human presence, and the tragic consequences that can arise from this coexistence. As the Kruger National Park community mourned the loss of Courtney Ntamane, they were reminded of the fragility of life in the shadow of the wild. The tragedy served as a poignant call to action, prompting discussions on how to better safeguard those who live within the boundaries of the park, ensuring that such a heartbreaking incident would not be repeated. The memory of Courtney, a young life lost too soon, would linger in the hearts of all who knew him, a somber testament to the unpredictable and often perilous interface between humans and the natural world they seek to preserve.
David Schreider, a distinguished professor at Miami University, met his untimely demise on a tragic day in June 2021 while hiking in the vast expanse of Wrangell, St. Elias National Park and Preserve in Alaska. The events leading up to his sad fall paint a picture of a man deeply passionate about his academic pursuits and his love for the great outdoors. Before his ill-fated expedition, David Schreider was known among his colleagues and students as a dedicated educator and a valued member of the Miami University community. With a career spanning over 2 decades at the Farmer School of Business, Schreider had earned a reputation as a dynamic and engaging professor. His commitment to his students was evident in his tireless efforts to provide them with the best possible learning experience. Outside of the classroom, Schreider was an avid adventurer, often seeking relaxation and inspiration in the beauty of nature. His passion for hiking and exploration had taken him to some of the most breathtaking landscapes across the globe. This same sense of adventure led him to go on the ascent of Donoho Peak, a towering summit within the Alaskan wilderness. Joined by his son and a group of close friends and family members, Schreider set out on June 25, 2021, eager to conquer the challenging terrain ahead. The day dawned with promise, the crisp mountain air filled with anticipation and excitement. Little did they know that tragedy lurked just around the corner. As they made their way up the slope of Donoho Peak, the group paused periodically to catch their breath and admire the breathtaking scenery. It was during one such moment of rest that disaster struck. Without warning, Schreider lost his footing and tumbled down the steep incline, falling approximately 150 feet. The echo of his desperate cry for help echoed through the wilderness. By the time his companions reached him, it was too late. Schreider lay motionless, his life gone in an instant. Shock and disbelief swept over the group as they grappled with the reality of what had just happened. His son, overcome with grief, immediately dialed emergency services in a desperate attempt to summon help. In the aftermath of Schreider's tragic fall, theories emerged regarding the circumstances surrounding his untimely demise. Some speculated that he may have lost his footing on the treacherous terrain, while others suggested the possibility of a sudden medical emergency. However, without concrete evidence to support any theory, the actual cause of his fall remained uncertain. As news of Schreider's passing spread, an outpouring of grief swept the Miami University community and beyond. Colleagues, students, and friends mourned the loss of a beloved educator and cherished friend. His absence left a void that could never be filled, his memory forever etched in the hearts of all who knew him. In the wake of this tragedy, what if someone had been there to catch him as he fell? What if the group had taken a different route up the mountain? These questions lingered in the minds of those left behind, and his memory will forever live on through the lives of the people whom he inspired and taught.
Jesse Chen, a 53-year-old industrial engineer from Andover, Massachusetts, was a passionate hiker who enjoyed venturing into the wilds of New Hampshire's White Mountains. Chen's passion for hiking began in his childhood in Fuzhou, China, as he loved exploring the countryside around his grandmother's house. Chen's love for adventure motivated him to take up hiking even as an adult. He frequently set out on difficult hikes with his family and friends. He established challenging objectives for himself, such as summiting all 48 of the White Mountains' 4,000-foot peaks by 2025. On June 10, 2022, Chen embarked solo on the difficult Presidential Traverse, a 20-mile journey across the summits of the White Mountains. Chen was really looking forward to his Father's Day weekend hike up Mount Washington. Chen remained determined to go on the adventure, despite his son, Kai Wen, a junior at Worcester Polytechnic Institute, being unable to join him as originally planned. Committed to facing the challenge alone, he embarked on his journey with optimism and thorough planning. While climbing Mount Washington, Chen kept his wife Lian Liu informed about his journey and the worsening weather conditions he faced. By turning on the tracking feature on his phone, Liu could keep tabs on his approximate location, giving him some comfort in the face of the mountain's unpredictable landscape. Upon reaching the peak of Mount Washington, Chen encountered severe and extreme weather conditions. Strong bursts of wind exceeding 80 miles per hour swept through the barren terrain, dropping the wind chill to a frigid 5 degrees below zero. Sleet and snow pounded the presidential range, making the dangerous conditions even worse. Despite his expertise and preparedness, Chen found himself in a relentless battle against the forces of nature, striving to stay alive. At 5:30 p.m., only a mile away from the Lake of the Clouds hut, Chen's circumstances worsened significantly. Realizing the seriousness of his situation, he texted Liu urgently, expressing his distress and inability to carry on. Liu, worried by her husband's message, quickly called 911 at 5:30 p.m., urgently requesting help to save Chen from the dangerous situation developing on the mountain. Still, identifying Chen's precise whereabouts was difficult, delaying the quick deployment of a rescue team. Unfazed, Kai Wen, the son of Chen, immediately took action, using the information from his father's phone to estimate his location with the help of Google Maps satellite view. With the help of Kai Wen, Liu communicated the crucial coordinates to emergency services in order to speed up the rescue mission and protect her husband from immediate peril. Although they tried to contact Chen, his condition worsened with time. In a last heartbreaking series of messages with his wife, Chen expressed his urgent need for assistance, indicating the serious condition he was in. Sadly, it would be the final exchange between the couple. At 5:47 p.m., Chen replied to Liu's question about seeking help, confirming the seriousness of his condition by saying he might lose his life in his present circumstances. Several hours later, a group of skilled mountain rescuers found Chen, who was unconscious and suffering from severe hypothermia. Despite all the efforts made to stabilize Chen and move him to a safe place, his condition kept getting worse quickly. After being taken to a truck waiting on the summit of Mount Washington, Chen was then moved to Androscoggin Valley Hospital. The difficult rescue operation lasted for several hours, until Chen finally reached the hospital at approximately 2 in the morning. Even with the relentless effort of healthcare workers, Chen passed away due to his injuries after hours of intensive medical treatment. Following his untimely death, a GoFundMe fundraiser was set up to gather support for the Chen family and offer a source of hope during their sorrow. The overflowing kindness and support demonstrated Chen's enduring impact and the lives he touched. While his family and friends struggled with his loss, they took comfort in remembering a cherished spouse, dad, and companion, whose daring nature and strong commitment would always be remembered fondly. The dawn chorus of Kruger National Park was in full swing as Rudy Lorist, a seasoned trail ranger known for his deep respect for the African wilderness, prepared to lead a group of 8 tourists on a bushwalk that promised to be the highlight of their visit. At 32, Rudy had spent almost a quarter of his life walking the trails of Kruger, each step deepening his understanding and appreciation of this vast, untamed landscape. The group, a mix of avid nature lovers and adventurous souls, gathered around Rudy, hanging on his every word as he outlined the day's journey. With Philip Gumedi, his reliable assistant at his side, Rudy felt a familiar thrill. This was more than a job, it was his calling. As they set off, the park unveiled its morning treasures, a giraffe peering down curiously at the group, a herd of impala gracefully bounding away, and a myriad of birds adding a symphony of sounds to the crisp morning air. Rudy's eyes sparkled with the joy of sharing these moments. His enthusiasm was infectious. The tranquility of the morning was abruptly pierced by the sound of rustling in the bush. Rudy's instincts kicked in, signaling him to halt the group with a raised hand. Silence fell, a tension-filled silence that made even the air seem heavy. Emerging from the thicket was a lioness, her gaze fixed on the group, her body language not of curiosity, but of warning. Rudy's heart skipped a beat, not from fear, but from the responsibility he felt for his group's safety. The lioness was not alone. Her cubs played in the background, oblivious to the standoff. Rudy knew they had to retreat to give this majestic creature the space she demanded. He whispered instructions, his voice calm but firm, as he and Philip began to guide the group backward, every step measured, every breath held. But the lioness advanced, her movements deliberate, her eyes never leaving Rudy. In a decisive moment, Rudy fired 2 warning shots into the air, hoping to deter her. The group watched in frozen anticipation, but the lioness, perhaps propelled by the instinct to protect her young, charged. Rudy's training had prepared him for this moment, yet nothing could truly prepare a person for the raw power of a lioness in full charge. He stood his ground, the protector of his group, as the lioness closed in. The world seemed to slow down, every detail magnified, a testament to the human brain's capacity to sharpen focus when faced with imminent danger. The lioness pounced, her powerful body colliding with Rudy's. He felt the weight of her, the heat of her breath, and the ferocity of her being. She bit down on his forearms, the pain sharp but distant as adrenaline coursed through his veins. Rudy fought back, not with anger, but with a desperate will to survive, to ensure the safety of the tourists who trusted him. The struggle was intense, a whirlwind of dust, roars, and shouts. Then, as suddenly as it began, the lioness released Rudy, retreating back to her cubs. The group, led by Philip, had maintained a safe distance, their eyes wide with shock and awe. Rudy was bleeding but alive, and was immediately tended to by a tourist who happened to be a doctor. First aid was administered as a temporary balm to the wounds that ran deeper than flesh. The park's medical team arrived swiftly, airlifting Rudy to Nelsprout Mediclinic, where he would spend days recovering, both physically and mentally. In the days that followed, Rudy reflected on the encounter, not with bitterness, but with a renewed sense of awe for the wilderness he called home. The lioness, in her display of maternal fierceness, had taught him a lesson in respect, a respect for the wild, for its inhabitants, and for the delicate balance that allowed humans and animals to coexist in this vast, untamed landscape. Rudy's recovery was not just physical, it was a journey that deepened his connection to the park, reinforcing his commitment to conservation and education. The encounter, while a testament to his bravery, served as a poignant reminder of the park's wild nature, a reminder that would guide him in his continued efforts to bridge the gap between humanity and the wild.
In August 2014, Rob Kerrer and his buddy Greg Mills went on a wild adventure in Wrangell, St. Elias National Park, Alaska. They signed up for the Alaska Mountain Wilderness Classic, a race through seriously tough terrain. Kerrer was no rookie. He'd done this thing 10 times before, but this time things went differently than planned. Before they hit the trail, Kerrer and Mills reviewed maps and gear. They packed food, water, and all the survival stuff they'd need for their trip to the wild. They were ready to tackle the Tana River, a wild beast of a waterway that cut through rugged mountains and dense forests. The first day on the river was like something out of a dream. The sun shone, the water was clear, and Kerrer and Mills felt cheerful and pleased with their trip. They paddled through rapids, dodged rocks, and laughed in the face of danger. But then, things took a turn for the worse. On day 2, disaster struck. Kerrer's raft got sucked into a powerful current, and before Mills could blink, his friend was gone. The river had swallowed him, leaving Mills alone in the wilderness. Panic set in as Mills searched for any sign of his friend, but there was nothing. Just the sound of rushing water and the empty echo of his voice. With no way to call for help and miles of wilderness ahead, Mills knew he had to keep moving to survive. He hoisted his pack onto his shoulders and set off into the unknown, his heart heavy with grief for his lost friend. Mills trudged through the wilderness for days, his mind a whirlwind of emotions. He fought through dense forests, scaled steep mountainsides, and crossed icy rivers while grappling with loneliness and loss. But through it all, he never gave up hope that he would find his way back to civilization. Back home, Kara's family and friends were frantic and worried. They organized search parties, contacted local authorities, and prayed for his safe return. But as the days passed by, their hopes began to fade. Search teams combed the wilderness, scouring every inch of the rough terrain for any sign of Kara. Helicopters buzzed overhead, dogs sniffed the ground, and volunteers braved the elements in search of their missing friend. But despite their best efforts, Kara remained elusive. As the search dragged on, theories emerged about what might have happened to Kara. Some said he had drowned in the river, while others speculated that a wild animal had attacked him. But without any solid evidence to go on, his fate remained a mystery. Then, just when all hope seemed lost, a miracle occurred. A helicopter spotted a lone figure stumbling through the wilderness, his face weathered and worn from days of hardship. It was Mills, alive and barely hanging on, but with no sign of Kara. Mills was airlifted to safety and reunited with his family, but the joy of his survival was overshadowed by the lingering question of what had happened to Kara. His disappearance left a void in the hearts of those who knew him, a void that could never be filled. Search efforts were launched immediately after Kara was discovered missing, with aerial and ground teams scouring the riverbanks for any sign of him. The Alaska Air National Guard, pilots from Ultima Thule Lodge, and locally hired ground searchers joined forces in a desperate bid to find him. After hours of searching, Rob's body was finally located on a gravel bar, approximately 2.5 miles downstream from where he was last seen. The news sent shockwaves through the tight-knit community of Wilderness Classic participants, who had come to know Rob as a friend and fellow adventurer. His death marked the first-ever fatality in the history of the Wilderness Classic, a terrifying reminder of the risks that come with exploring the wild. Despite the tragedy, Rob's friends and family took solace in the knowledge that he had died doing what he loved, surrounded by the beauty of the Alaskan wilderness.
In the dense wilderness of Kruger National Park, nestled in the heart of South Africa, an ordinary Tuesday morning on December 20th, 2022, transformed into a life-altering event for 57-year-old ranger Joe Nkuna. Nkuna, a seasoned guardian of the park's vast biodiversity, was undertaking his routine patrol in the Pretorius Cup section, along with his fellow rangers. The tranquility of the morning was shattered when a breeding herd of elephants emerged, crossing the road right before their eyes, a common yet always awe-inspiring sight within the confines of this natural sanctuary. However, peace quickly turned to peril as the rangers maintained their distance, respecting the colossal creature's passage. One elephant broke away from the safety of its herd. With a suddenness that belied its massive frame, the elephant turned, its eyes locking onto Nkuna. Before he could react, the elephant charged with a speed and ferocity that belied its massive frame, a terrifying testament to the unpredictable nature of the wild. Nkuna's colleagues, witnessing the horror unfold, sprang into action. In a desperate bid to save their comrade, they fired a warning shot into the air. The sound, sharp and echoing, was enough to deter the elephant, sending it back into the bush from whence it came. The immediate danger was averted, and they quickly called for help, their training kicking in during this critical moment of need. The response was swift. A helicopter carrying a doctor and a support team cut through the sky, arriving on the scene with urgency. Nkuna by this time was in a dire state. The medical team worked feverishly to stabilize him before transporting him to the nearest hospital. The severity of his injuries was such that he was placed on life support in the intensive care unit at a private hospital in Johannesburg, marking the beginning of a long and arduous journey to recovery. Barbara Creasy, the Minister of Forestry, Fisheries, and the Environment, took time to visit Nkuna in the hospital. During her visit, she found him to be in surprisingly good spirits, despite the gravity of his situation. Nkuna, with 32 years of service as a ranger under his belt, expressed an undiminished passion for his work and an eagerness to return to the bush, a testament to his resilience and dedication to conservation. Creasy commended his bravery and assured him of his vital place within the conservation family, highlighting the dangers rangers like Nkuna face daily in their efforts to protect South Africa's natural heritage. The attack underscored the inherent risks of working in close proximity to wild animals. Elephants, generally peaceful giants, can become aggressive under certain circumstances, such as the presence of calves or during the must period in males, when testosterone levels spike and behavior becomes unpredictable. This incident served as a stark reminder of the unpredictability of nature and the bravery of those who choose to protect it. Head Ranger Catherine Dreyer, reflecting on the incident, expressed relief that Nkuna was not fatally wounded. She acknowledged the daily dangers faced by field rangers and emphasized the importance of their work in safeguarding the park's wildlife and natural resources. The bush's density, particularly during certain times of the year, can make it challenging to see animals from a distance and react in time, further heightening the risks involved in their duty. The incident prompted a review of safety protocols for rangers on patrol, aiming to enhance their protection without compromising their essential work. The commitment of rangers like Nkuna and the quick response of his colleagues and the medical team highlight the dedication and courage that underpin conservation efforts in Kruger National Park. As Nkuna's story spread, it served not only as a cautionary tale, but also a source of inspiration. It reminded those within and beyond the conservation community of the sacrifices made by individuals like him, who face the dangers of the wild with an unwavering commitment to preserving the natural world for future generations. Nkuna's journey from a harrowing encounter to a hopeful recovery embodies the spirit of conservation, a relentless pursuit of protection and preservation against all odds. In the heart of South Africa's Kruger National Park, a renowned destination for wildlife enthusiasts, a British safari guide, 38-year-old Curtis Plum, found himself in a life-threatening encounter that would test his resolve and the quick thinking of those around him. Plum, an experienced guide with Nhongo Safari Tours, had been navigating the rugged terrains of the park since 2011, driven by a profound passion for the bush and its inhabitants. On a seemingly ordinary Thursday afternoon, under the watchful eyes of tourist Grant Ford and his teenage son, what began as a routine wildlife observation swiftly escalated into a harrowing ordeal. As Plum's vehicle, filled with eager tourists, came to a halt to admire a majestic leopard spotted in the underbrush, the tranquility of the moment was shattered. Without any forewarning, the leopard, embodying the unpredictability of the wild, launched an attack that no one saw coming. In an instant, the predator had clambered onto the safari truck, its sights set on Plum. The guide, clad in a bush jacket that offered scant protection, found his arm ensnared in the jaws of the leopard. Panic ensued as the occupants of the truck screamed, their safari adventure turning into a nightmare right before their eyes. The chaos that followed seemed like a scene from an action movie, albeit with an unwelcome dose of reality. Some of the tourists, in a desperate bid to save their guide, resorted to using their cameras as weapons, striking at the leopard. Meanwhile, witnesses in a Hyundai minivan, ahead of Plum's vehicle, made a bold move. They rammed the leopard with their car door, a testament to human ingenuity in moments of crisis. Despite their efforts, the leopard's grip remained unyielding. Plum, faced with a dire situation, managed to reverse the vehicle, a move that momentarily freed him from the leopard's clutches. However, the animal, undeterred, continued its pursuit. It charged after the vehicle, even leaping onto the bonnet in a relentless attempt to breach the safety of the truck. Plum, with no alternative, executed a maneuver that would injure the leopard, driving over its hind legs. The minivan joined in, driving over the animal, a collective effort to neutralize the threat. In the aftermath, park officials speculated that the leopard had been engaged in a conflict with another of its kind, as evidenced by its injuries. The encounter served as a stark reminder of the unpredictable nature of wildlife and the inherent risks involved in safari tours. Plum, who had ventured from the UK to South Africa, motivated by his love for nature, found himself hospitalized, a stark outcome of his dedication to guiding tourists through the wonders of Kruger National Park. The incident, captured on camera, not only highlighted the dangers faced by safari guides, but also showcased the courage and quick thinking of tourists who rose to the occasion. Amidst the peril, there was a glimmer of humor in the absurdity of using cameras and car doors as tools of defense against the wild leopard. It was a testament to the unpredictable ways in which humans respond to danger, a story that, while fraught with tension, also captured the indomitable spirit of those who find themselves at the mercy of the wild. It was the dawn of Monday, February 1st, 2021, when Ian Forgaze, a seasoned backcountry skier, known affectionately as Skiin' Ian or Lincoln Lynx, embarked on what would tragically become his final descent. As dawn broke over the serene landscape of Lincoln, Vermont, Forgaze, age 54, prepared himself for a day of adventure in the White Mountains, a terrain he knew almost as intimately as his own backyard. At 5:30 a.m., Forgaze, equipped with an array of essential gear, including an avalanche transponder, shovel, ice axe, probe, and more, departed from his home in Lincoln. He was a man of the mountains, intimately familiar with their allure and their dangers. By 9 a.m., Forgaze had reached the tree line on Mount Monroe, a testament to his endurance and determination. The crisp mountain air greeted him as he continued his ascent, pushing onward toward the summit of Mount Washington. 2 hours later, at 11 a.m., Forgaze stood near the pinnacle of Mount Washington, the highest peak in the northeastern United States. The panoramic view from the summit stretched out before him, a vast expanse of snow-capped peaks and rugged terrain. From this lofty vantage point, Forgaze paused to capture the moment at 11:30 a.m., sending a photo to his friend Brian Moore, who was camping in Costa Rica at the time. He wrote a simple message saying that he misses his bud during the journey. After sending a few more texts and photos to friends, Forgaze started going down at 11:45 a.m., drawn by the fresh snow ahead. Little did he know that this would be the beginning of his fateful encounter with the forces of nature. At 12:15 p.m., somewhere along his descent, Forgaze triggered a small avalanche, a sudden and unexpected turn of events that would seal his tragic fate. In the vast expanse of the backcountry, even the most experienced skiers are not immune to the whims of the mountain. Caught in the grip of the avalanche, Forgaze was swept into a hollow, where the snow came to rest against the overhanging cliff as the debris piled up around him. Forgaze's absence raised concern among his friends and loved ones as the hours passed. They knew something was amiss when he failed to respond to calls and messages. The alarm had been raised by Tuesday evening, and authorities were alerted to Forgaze's disappearance. Search and rescue teams were mobilized, combing the rugged terrain of Mount Washington in search of any sign of Forgaze. Cell phone telemetry and analysis of his last known communications provided crucial clues, narrowing down the search area to the vicinity of Mount Monroe. Despite the challenging conditions, a mix of deep snow, dense brush, and elevated avalanche danger, the search pressed on. Deep in the heart of the Ammonoosuc Ravine, where Forgaze had ventured, rescuers faced treacherous terrain and unpredictable weather. Then, a breakthrough. Forgaze's car was discovered at the Ammonoosuc Ravine trailhead, confirming his presence in the area. With renewed determination, search teams honed in on the ravine, following leads provided by Forgaze's last communications. At last, a beacon signal was acquired, a faint but hopeful sign of Forgaze's presence buried beneath the snow. For over an hour, rescuers toiled tirelessly, digging through layers of avalanche debris in a race against time. Finally, at a depth of 13 feet, Ian Forgaze was found, his lifeless body retrieved from the icy grip of the mountain. Despite the valiant efforts of search and rescue teams, it was too late. Forgaze had succumbed to the lack of oxygen. In the aftermath of his passing, the backcountry community mourned the loss of one of their own, a man who lived life to the fullest, embracing the challenges and joys of the mountains with unwavering passion. And as the snow continued to fall silently upon the slopes of Mount Washington, Ian Forgaze's spirit lived on, forever intertwined with the wild beauty of the backcountry. In August 2022, Jital Agnihatri decided to visit Zion National Park with two of her friends for a hiking trip in the Narrows. She loved spending her time outdoors, but could not do it frequently due to her hectic life as a promising young PhD researcher at the University of Arizona Department of Hydrology and Atmospheric Sciences. All things considered, she saw the hiking trip as a time to relax from the stress of academia before starting the fall semester at the University of Arizona. However, just as Jital and her friends were gearing up to start their hike, Zion Park officials issued several flash flood warnings. Given that hiking through the Narrows involved wading through the virgin riverbed at certain points, the prospect of being caught in the river during a flash flood was potentially life-threatening. Regardless, Jital decided to go on the hike as planned. Meanwhile, her friends chose the wiser option of staying back, and they all planned to meet up at the visitor center's parking lot later in the evening. During the hike, the flash flood struck suddenly, turning the dry washes and smooth rock surfaces of the Narrows into a dangerous river of fast-moving water and debris in just minutes. Sadly, Jital, who reportedly couldn't swim, was swept away by the flood, along with a group of other hikers. Shortly after the flash flood, park rangers were informed about hikers being swept away. They promptly organized a rescue team to assist them. One injured hiker was discovered downstream, several hundred yards away on the Virgin River, and was immediately transported to the hospital. Several other hikers found themselves stranded on elevated ground surrounded by water, but were safely escorted to dry land once the water levels went back. The rangers then interviewed the park visitors, asking if anyone was missing from their group. When no one offered information about a missing person, they believed everyone had been located. However, hours later, Jital was reported missing, likely by her friends, when she failed to appear. This triggered an immediate search effort involving a team of swiftwater-trained rescuers, search dogs, and over 170 emergency responders. On the first day of the search, Jital remained unaccounted for. As the search efforts continued, Jital's family, who had traveled to assist in the search, anxiously awaited any updates regarding her whereabouts. Her brother even spoke with news outlets, expressing his shock at the suddenness of the flash floods and lamenting the family's anguish over not knowing what Jital was experiencing. On that same day, video footage circulated by a news outlet showed at least two individuals desperately clinging to broken-off parts of fallen trees as the flash flood carried them away. One of the individuals looked like Jital, although the video could not 100% confirm this. When Jital's brother was interviewed about it, he expressed deep concern that the chilling footage may have captured his sister's final moments. The search continued into the second day, with rescue officers carefully going through the areas where Jital might have been swept away by the flood. They focused their efforts on investigating the fast-flowing and deep sections of the river, as well as areas with dense vegetation and log jams. However, it wasn't until the fourth day of the search that Jital was finally discovered. She was found 6 miles south of the Narrows, already deceased, a grim reality later confirmed by a medical examiner. In the wake of Jital's passing, an outpouring of tributes flooded in to honor her memory. Her university described her as gracious, humble, and dedicated, while a close friend fondly remembered her as the most wonderful person and praised her kindness towards everyone. A funeral service was later held for Jital on Thursday, August 25, 2022, at Metcalf Mortuary in St. George, Utah.
El Capitan, or the Chief, is Yosemite National Park's best-known landmark, a vertical rock formation looming 3,000 feet above the park. To some, El Capitan is one of Mother Nature's beautiful creations. To others, it's just some big rock. But there's also a special category of people, those who see El Capitan as a way of life, a place that feeds the soul. 42-year-old Tim Klein from Leona Valley, California, and 45-year-old Jason Wells from Boulder, Colorado, were part of this special category of people. They were immensely experienced climbers, having conquered numerous walls and peaks. Both Klein and Wells regarded El Capitan as a one-of-a-kind place. Wells even called the granite monolith his magic stone. On the early morning of June 2, 2018, Tim Klein and Jason Wells were already up and doing what they loved best, speed climbing the 10-pitch free blast portion of El Capitan's Salate Wall. Their goal was straightforward: make an in-a-day ascent using a technique called short fixing. This wasn't the men's first rodeo. Klein and Wells had climbed El Cap about 70 times together, and they had nearly 200 El Capitan ascents between the two of them. The two men had almost legend status amidst the climbing community. They were known for always being joyful and, more importantly, swift and safe. They had been friends and climbing partners for decades, which enabled them to lap the monolith multiple times in the same weekend, or even twice in the same day. This time around, Klein and Wells were joined by a third climber, Kevin Prince. It was a typical busy Saturday on El Cap. Several teams of climbers were both ahead and behind Klein, Wells, and Prince. As the three men made their way up the Salate Wall, they encountered Jordan Cannon and his team. They quickly passed Cannon, motoring up the wall. When Cannon looked at the men, it seemed to him that Wells and Klein were simul-climbing. If his observation was correct, then Klein and Wells were tied into the same rope while moving at the same time. Cannon also noticed that Prince was solo climbing up a rope that Klein had secured to bolt anchors positioned above the half-dollar portion of the climb. It seemed to Cannon that the men moved quickly, short fixing without placing much protection. As Jason Wells and Tim Klein made their way through pitch 9 or 10, a moderately difficult portion of the climb, approaching Mammoth Terraces, luck and experience failed them. It was about 8:15 a.m. when Jordan Cannon, whom the men had passed earlier, heard a thud coming from above. When he looked up, Cannon saw Jason Wells fall about 196 feet before stopping briefly. Then Wells fell even farther and hit the wall. Almost instantly, Cannon heard Tim Klein screaming. Klein fell too. Their rope caught behind a block, suspending the men in the air for a very short moment. But then the rope was severed, dooming Wells and Klein. The men fell to their deaths about 1,000 feet to the ground. Authorities couldn't determine why the two experienced climbers fell. According to Cannon, it was also impossible to determine if they had gear between them due to the rope being severed a few feet above Klein's knot. Their accident thus became yet another Yosemite mystery. Both Tim Klein and Jason Wells are remembered fondly by those who knew them, and by those who were inspired by the duo's extraordinary performances. Klein was a beloved teacher at Palmdale High School, who earned Teacher of the Year twice. He leaves behind his wife and 2 young sons. Wells worked as an investment manager and is remembered for his immense love of climbing. Garrett Bonkowski and Jessica Bartz were just your average couple, filled with hopes and dreams for the future. They hailed from Peoria, Arizona, and had been planning a big move to Jessica's hometown in Iowa. It was a chance for them to start fresh, explore new opportunities, and build a life together in a place filled with memories from Jessica's childhood. Before they hit the road, Garrett and Jessica spent weeks packing their belongings, sorting through old mementos and saying goodbyes to friends and family. There was an excitement in the air, a sense of anticipation for the adventures ahead. They mapped out their route, planned their stops, and packed their car with everything they would need for the trip. As they drove through the vast expanse of the American Midwest, Garrett and Jessica shared updates and photos of their travels on social media. They gazed upon the towering skyscrapers of Chicago, the Great Plains rolling hills, and the Rocky Mountains' majestic beauty. Each new sight was a reminder of the vastness and diversity of their country, and they felt grateful to be experiencing it together. However, as they moved from home, communication between Garrett and Jessica became less frequent. Text messages went unanswered, phone calls went straight to voicemail, and their social media accounts fell silent. At first, their friends and family chalked it up to spotty cell service or busy schedules, but as days turned into weeks, concern began to grow. Sally Liddicoat, a close friend of Jessica's, was the first to raise the alarm. She had been eagerly following Garrett and Jessica's trip online, but she knew something needed to be fixed when she noticed that they hadn't posted anything in over a week. She contacted Jessica's family, but no one had heard from her or Garrett since they had left Arizona. In Iowa, Jessica's family anxiously awaited their arrival. They had been counting down the days until Garrett and Jessica would pull into their driveway. But their excitement turned to worry as the days passed with no sign of them. Jessica's father, Brian Bartz, contacted the authorities to report his daughter and her boyfriend missing, and the search for Garrett and Jessica began in earnest. Investigators retraced Garrett and Jessica's planned route, scouring surveillance footage, interviewing witnesses, and cross-referencing credit card activity. They searched rest stops, gas stations, and roadside attractions, hoping for any clue leading them to the missing couple. But as the days stretched into months, their efforts yielded little results. Then, just when hope began to fade away, a breakthrough came in the form of a hiker's discovery in the Grand Canyon. The bodies of Garrett and Jessica were found near a remote trail, their car parked nearby, abandoned and forgotten. It was a tragic end to a journey that had begun with so much promise, shocking their communities back home. The news of Garrett and Jessica's disappearance and subsequent death spread quickly, sparking an outpouring of grief and disbelief from friends, family, and strangers alike. Memorials were held, candles were lit, and tributes poured in. But amid the mourning, there were questions about what had happened to Garrett and Jessica, and why their journey had ended in such tragedy. One theory suggested that Garrett and Jessica had simply gotten lost, taken a wrong turn, and ended up in the remote wilderness of the Grand Canyon. However, this explanation seemed unlikely, given that Garrett and Jessica were experienced travelers who had meticulously planned their route before setting out. Another theory floated by authorities was that foul play may have been involved. The remote location of Garrett and Jessica's remains, coupled with the lack of any obvious signs of an accident or natural disaster, led investigators to believe that someone may have been responsible for their disappearance and death. But without any concrete evidence or suspects, this theory remained just that, a theory. As the investigation into Garrett and Jessica's disappearance continued, their families grappled with the harsh reality of their loss. They mourned the lives cut short, the dreams left unfulfilled, and the unanswered questions that would haunt them for years. Ultimately, the story of Garrett Bonkowski and Jessica Bartz was an example of how even the best-laid plans could go awry, and that tragedy can strike when we least expect it. But amid the sadness and uncertainty, there was hope that Garrett and Jessica would be remembered, not for how they died, but for how they lived and for the love and laughter they brought into the world.